Origins of the Korean War. The Korean War, 1950 to 1953, was a conflict that arose in the context of Cold War tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union. Following the end of World War II in 1945, Korea, which had been under Japanese colonial rule since 1910, was liberated. However, the country was soon divided along the 38th parallel into two occupation zones, the Soviet-backed North and the American-supported South. This division was intended to be temporary, but it solidified into two separate political entities, each claiming to be the legitimate government of Korea. In the North, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK, was established under Kim Il-sung, with strong Soviet and later Chinese backing. In the South, the Republic of Korea, ROK, was founded under Syngman Rhee, supported by the United States. Both leaders were committed to reunifying Korea under their respective governments, and this mutual hostility set the stage for conflict. Outbreak of the war. The war began on June 25, 1950, when North Korean forces, equipped with Soviet tanks and artillery, launched a surprise invasion of South Korea. Within days, they captured Seoul, the South Korean capital. The North's rapid advance pushed South Korean and American forces into a small defensive perimeter around the port city of Busan. The United Nations, at the urging of the United States, quickly condemned the invasion and authorized a military intervention to repel the North Korean forces. A coalition of 16 nations, led by the United States, formed the United Nations Command, UNC, to support South Korea. General Douglas MacArthur was appointed as the commander of this multinational force. The turning point, the Battle of Incheon. The tide of the war shifted dramatically with the Battle of Incheon in September 1950. General MacArthur orchestrated a daring amphibious landing behind enemy lines at Incheon, a port city near Seoul. This operation surprised the North Koreans and led to the recapture of Seoul. The UNC forces then pushed northward, crossing the 38th parallel with the goal of reunifying Korea under a democratic government. By October 1950, UNC forces advanced deep into North Korean territory, approaching the Yalu River, which marked the border with China. This aggressive move alarmed China, which feared a hostile US-backed state on its border. China's intervention and stalemate. In response, China entered the war in late October 1950, sending hundreds of thousands of volunteer troops to assist North Korea. These forces launched a massive counteroffensive, pushing UNC forces south of the 38th parallel once again, and recapturing Seoul by January 1951. The entry of China into the war significantly escalated the conflict. However, by mid-1951, the front lines had stabilized near the 38th parallel, and the war entered a phase of stalemate. Both sides dug into fortified positions, and fierce battles were fought over relatively small pieces of territory. The fighting became increasingly brutal, with heavy casualties on both sides. Diplomatic efforts and armistice. Despite the ongoing conflict, diplomatic efforts to end the war began as early as mid-1951. Peace talks were held intermittently in the town of Panmunjom, but they were frequently stalled by disagreements over issues such as prisoner exchanges and the final border between the two Koreas. Finally, on July 27, 1953, an armistice agreement was signed. The armistice established the Korean Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, a heavily fortified border that remains one of the most militarized areas in the world. While the fighting ceased, no formal peace treaty was ever signed, and technically, the two Koreas remain at war to this day. The human cost of the war. The Korean War was devastating for the Korean Peninsula. An estimated 2.5 million people were killed, with civilians accounting for a significant portion of the casualties. Entire cities and villages were destroyed, and millions of Koreans were displaced. The war also resulted in the separation of countless families, many of whom remained divided by the DMZ. The United States suffered approximately 36,000 fatalities, while South Korea lost around 217,000 soldiers. North Korean and Chinese military casualties were also substantial, with estimates ranging from hundreds of thousands to over 1 million. Impact on the Cold War. The Korean War had a profound impact on the global Cold War dynamics. It marked the first military conflict of the Cold War and set a precedent for future U.S. military interventions in the name of containing communism. The war solidified the division of Korea into two hostile states, each aligned with opposing superpowers. For the United States, the war underscored the importance of maintaining a strong military presence in Asia. It also led to a significant increase in defense spending and the permanent stationing of U.S. troops in South Korea. The Soviet Union and China, meanwhile, deepened their alliance, although strains between the two would emerge later. Legacy of the Korean War. The legacy of the Korean War continues to shape the geopolitics of East Asia. The Korean peninsula remains divided, with periodic tensions and military confrontations between North and South Korea. Efforts at reconciliation, such as inter-Korean summits and agreements, have had limited success due to fundamental differences in political systems and mutual distrust. The war also had a lasting impact on the societies of both Koreas. In South Korea, the conflict contributed to the development of a strong national identity and eventually paved the way for rapid economic growth and democratization. In North Korea, the war reinforced the regime's narrative of resistance against foreign aggression and justified the Kim dynasty's authoritarian rule. The Korean War was a pivotal event in 20th century history, shaping the political and military landscape of the Korean peninsula and the broader Cold War. While it is often referred to as the Forgotten War in the United States, its consequences continue to influence international relations and the lives of millions of Koreans. The unresolved nature of the conflict serves as a stark reminder of the enduring legacy of Cold War divisions and the challenges of achieving lasting peace.